Only item, Senate nomination number 31, John Rounsaville, Mississippi Development Authority as the Executive Director, term immediate effectively. Appointee shall serve at the pleasure of the Governor. Mr. Rounsaville, thank you for being here. Sorry it took a little longer than we had hoped for, but I'm going to open the floor up to you. Obviously, we've had you in here before. This is taking off the, I guess, the temporary label and putting on the permanent label, as much as permanent will and pleasure is these days. But congratulations. I'm going to open it up. You make any comments you'd like to make. Hit the green button on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've prepared an opening statement to read to the committee.
Sure.
My time is your time. I know y'all are rushed, but whatever your will is, I'll proceed as.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today for consideration of my confirmation as Executive Director of the Mississippi Development Authority. You do have my resume and the background information I was required to provide the committee. Those materials lay out most of my professional background and qualifications, but I'd like to take a brief moment to tell you a bit more about myself, which those materials may not reflect. I was born in Greenville, where my mother grew up, and I was raised there until the age of 12 or 13, so I've got Delta roots. We then moved to the North Mississippi Hills, where my father was raised, at the intersection of Grenada, Calhoun, and Yalobusha counties. My mom was a registered nurse who spent most of her career as an RN instructor at Mississippi Delta Community College and Holmes Community College at the Grenada branch. My father had an air conditioning and refrigeration repair business, a one-man operation where he crawled around in people's attics in August and under their houses in January. And the point of me sharing with you that background is to give you some insight as to how I was raised. And I was raised in the country in a blue-collar family, 17 miles from Calhoun City and 27 miles from Grenada, and about 8 miles to the closest country store where you get a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread. But I'm a lifelong Mississippian, and though I moved away from college for a time after work to work on Capitol Hill for several years, I never considered making anywhere else my home. I spent a decade of my career with an engineering firm where I worked on infrastructure and economic development, community development projects. So I've got private sector service as well, in addition to my federal and state service. And as you all do, I want Mississippi to win and prosper, and that's our goal. I want my kids to grow up here and get good educations here. I want them to be able to raise their families here. I want them to be able to find meaningful, fulfilling careers here in Mississippi. So I realize that to achieve those aspirations, we've got to do a good job at MDA. But along with that, leading MDA is a tremendous responsibility. But I'm committed to being successful if confirmed to the position. I've served in an interim capacity since the beginning of last June, and I believe we made some great achievements, both internally with strengthening our team and externally through our economic development achievements. Last year, while a lot of people were preaching gloom and doom due to the pandemic, Mississippi had a strong economic development year. The first quarter of 2020 was a little bit slow, and then March, April, and May of last year, when COVID really hit, we didn't win a single project in Mississippi. But by June, things picked up, and by July and August, things were really humming, and we ended up the year with more than $1.6 billion in new capital investment for the state and over 5,000 new jobs. To put that number in perspective, in 2019, Mississippi secured $1.1 billion in new capital investment. And looking back to 2012, we averaged approximately $950 million per year in new capital investment. But the significance of 2020's win, $1.6 billion, is not just the size of the overall investment, it's also where those investments went. 80% of our new capital investment last year came from existing Mississippi business, 80%. We also saw significant wins in our rural communities. For example, since September, 6 forest products manufacturers have located or expanded in our state. They went to places like Winona and Lumberton and to Warren, Alcorn, and Grenada counties. And we also saw manufacturing wins in smaller counties like Panola, Monroe, Stone, and Clay counties. And so far in 2021, economic development looks strong. Through the first quarter, we've realized $200 million in new capital investment. That's an increase of 250% above the same time last year. And along with that, we've got about 700 new jobs so far here in the first quarter. So what we're doing is working. We've got a great team, a strong team at MDA. We all share a vision for a prosperous state for all our families and all our neighbors. But I'll add that also adding to our success, but it's not just MDA, it's not the MDA show, but we depend heavily on our local economic development organizations. Whether it's as a congressional staffer, a governor staffer, through the engineering business, or through my 10 years as rural development director for Mississippi, I've worked closely with many of our local developers throughout my career. And when I came into this position, I spent my first several months making visits with them to get their views on MDA and how to make improvements. I seek counsel from them every day. They're good at what they do. I value their knowledge, and I lean on them to help me make the best decisions. While we're seeing success, we also must recognize that we have challenges. As we've traveled and met with site consultants over the past several months, we've consistently been told that Mississippi is lacking in product. And that is, when I say product, I mean shovel-ready sites ready to go. But working with our utility partners, we've developed a plan to identify areas of the state with the most potential for new development and to prepare sites ready to market. And certainly nothing is in stone to the final gavel falls, but this committee has been very helpful so far with making sure that that plan can be successful through our bond request. And I want to thank you for that. We also are reaching out to organizations that can be valuable partners in our goal to grow the economy. Due to the successes we've seen in the past several months with the forestry industry in particular, we've joined forces with the Mississippi Forestry Association, and we're working on another site development program specific to forestry only. Obviously, that's a benefit to rural communities in Mississippi. Though we all hope to see a change in the next census results, we recognize another challenge is growing our population. Importantly, we also recognize that we've got to keep and retain our best talent. Working with various partners, we do have initiatives underway to address this matter, which I'd enjoy sharing with you during the hearing. Our goal is to tell Mississippi's story to the world, and building on the logistics hub of North Mississippi to agribusiness successes, to research-intensive facilities like URDIC and Vicksburg, Mississippi has incredible possibilities. Once we get national and international companies to give us a look, we do have a strong record for getting them to locate or expand here. And that's reflected in the volume of companies that continue making expansions after they arrive here and realize how successful they can be in Mississippi. I'm hopeful that the investments being made in broadband and with continued emphasis on education and workforce training, we can accelerate the expansion of Mississippi's economy. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to addressing any questions and working with you in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Roundsville. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, peer review came back, and because of your education and work experience, your appointment complies with applicable state law. Peer did not locate any derogatory information regarding Ms. Roundsville. And besides your civilian employment, you're also a major in the Mississippi Air National Guard, as if you don't have enough on your plate already. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I think Senator Horn, you wanted to speak on behalf of Mr. Roundsville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had the pleasure of knowing Mr. Roundsville for over 15 years, from the time he was at the governor's office under Governor Barber. Followed his career over at Wagner Engineering, where he did a great job, and did a lot of work with him with rural development when he had his tenure over there. And I've observed what he's been doing so far at MDA under his interim status. He's aggressively trying to build up an aggressive team that's talented and that are action-oriented. And I really admire what he's trying to do with revamping the programs at MDA to speak to the needs of our economic development strategies in the 21st century. So I'd like to be recognized at the proper time for a motion.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, Senator Horn for a motion.
I move we do advise and consent on the nomination of John Roundsville as MDA Director.
All right, you heard the motion. Motion is to advise and consent on the nomination of John Rounsaville. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Motion
Thank
to
you, Mr.
rise and
Chairman.
report. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Congratulations.